World News program coming to you live from Algiers with me, Mariam Zian, to the headlines. Dozens of Palestinians were killed and injured in brutal Zionist massacres across various areas of the Gaza Strip. The Ministry of Health in Gaza reported 10 deaths in recent hours due to famine and malnutrition. Meanwhile, members of the UN Security Council expressed concern over the risk of famine in Gaza, while the White House said President Trump voiced his desire to see an end to the war. Algiers Foreign Ministry summoned the chargé d'affaires of the French embassy in Algiers following a statement regarding the accreditation of French diplomatic and consular staff in Algeria. The ministry stressed that such French conduct is intolerable. Also, coming up next, in Sudan, dozens were killed and injured in shelling by the Rapid Support Forces on Al-Fashir. Human rights organizations said the RSF is converting displacement camps into military barracks. And the Kremlin stressed that any meeting between Presidents Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky must be well prepared. Russia reported that a Ukrainian drone attack sparked a fire in Rostov, while Zelensky confirmed power outages for tens of thousands of residents across 3 Ukrainian regions after a Russian strike. Hello and welcome back to the details of your program. First, in our news file, at least 37 Palestinians were killed and scores of others were injured in Zionist airstrikes that targeted various areas across the Gaza Strip since dawn today. According to medical sources in Gaza, hospitals' occupations warplanes carried out a series of air raids targeting a number of Palestinians in several areas of the Strip since dawn, in conjunction with ground and aerial bombardment across the entire territory. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in the Gaza Strip announced the martyrdom of 10 Palestinians, including 2 children, over the past 24 hours as a result of the ongoing Zionist starvation campaign against Gaza. The Ministry of Health confirmed that the total number of martyrs due to the starvation war imposed on the Strip has reached 313, including 119 children. The International Committee of the Red Cross dubbed the damage inflicted to medical facilities in the Gaza Strip by the Zionist occupation's airstrikes as unacceptable due to the casualties and destruction of vital infrastructure needed by patients. According to a statement by the Red Cross, this came in response to the bloody massacre committed by the Zionist occupation, which launched 2 successive airstrikes on Nasser Medical Complex, the last main hospital still operating in the southern part of the Strip, killing more than 20 civilians, including press and medical teams as well as civil defense personnel.
The damage to a medical facility such as the Nasser Medical Complex in an airstrike and the killing and injury of members of medical teams, journalists and patients is unacceptable. The Nasser Medical Complex is one of the last major hospitals still operating in southern Gaza, providing critical and specialized medical services to thousands of patients in an area where only a limited number of healthcare facilities remain amid ongoing hostilities. Medical facilities and journalists must be respected and protected in accordance with international humanitarian law. We also call for all possible measures to be taken to support their work and ensure their safety.
Hamas on Wednesday accused the Israeli occupation of committing a heinous crime and a blatant violation of international law by continuing to withhold the bodies of Palestinian martyrs. In a statement marking the Palestinian Day for the recovery of martyrs' bodies, the movement said that Israel is holding the remains of 726 martyrs in mass graves and special morgues, some for decades, in addition to others whose fate remains unknown.
The occupation is holding the bodies of 726 martyrs in the so-called cemeteries of numbers and in special morgues, some of them for decades. This policy has escalated to an unprecedented level during the ongoing war in the Gaza Strip, which has lasted for nearly 23 months. There are also other cases where the fate of the bodies has not yet been disclosed. These practices represent a blatant violation of international law, which guarantees the rights of the dead, and are aimed at punishing Palestinian families and depriving them of the right to bury their loved ones with dignity. The Palestinian resistance has demonstrated its commitment to humanitarian values in its treatment of the bodies of occupation soldiers during recent exchange operations, in contrast to what it described as the sadistic and fascist approach of the occupation government. We call on the United Nations and the international humanitarian rights institutions to abolish the crime of the symmetries of numbers and to compel Israel to end the policy of withholding bodies.
And Reuters reported, citing a senior White House official, that U.S. President Donald Trump chaired a meeting on Wednesday on the war in Gaza attended by former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and Trump's former Middle East envoy Jared Kushner. Reuters added that Trump senior White House officials, Blair and Kushner, discussed all the aspects of the Gaza file. Media outlets quoting the White House that Trump expressed his desire to see the war in Gaza come to an end. And still within the Palestinian file, the permanent representative of Algeria to the UN, Ammar bin Jama, called on the UN Security Council to take action to impose a ceasefire in order to protect and save innocent lives. During his address to the Security Council on the situation in the Middle East and the occupied Palestinian territories, bin Jama stated that the moral and legal responsibility is to ensure humanitarian access to feed the starving Palestinians in Gaza, stressing that ending the genocide and the Strip is not a choice, but an obligation.
This Council must act as a matter of duty, a moral duty, a legal duty, must act to impose a ceasefire and protect and save innocent lives, must act to ensure unhindered humanitarian access at scale, must act to feed the starving and break famine. To fail is to be complicit. To delay is to accept shame. Yes, shame. To stop a genocide is not an option. It is an obligation.
Bin Jama emphasized Algeria's attachment to ethics, legitimacy, and solidarity with every suffering person. He renewed Algeria's ongoing call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza as the only condition to end the misery in the Strip.
Our compass points in one direction, and one direction only. Only toward morality and legality. And also empathy toward all those who are suffering. We call, and we will continue to call for an immediate and conditional and permanent ceasefire, the only condition that can end the agony of Gaza.
The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs condemned the incursions by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and several of his ministers into the occupied West Bank to participate in a pro-settlement event, describing the move as a blatant violation of international law and UN resolutions. In a statement issued on Wednesday, the ministry said the incursion reinforces the West Bank annexation, genocide, displacement, starvation, and land confiscation, while encouraging Israeli forces and settlers to persist in violating and assaulting Palestinians, their land, property, and holy sites, as seen in the brutal raid of the city of Ramallah, The ministry called on the international community to put an end to Israel's escalation against the Palestinian people and take serious action toward protecting the two-state solution. Palestinians continue to suffer from the Zionist entity's continued genocide on the entire region as part of its plan to seize the Gaza Strip. Several people were killed and more others were displaced inside the Gaza Strip as a result of the sporadic and relentless shelling carried out by the occupation forces. Osama Ayadi has more.
In the densely populated Gaza Strip, residents continue to bear the brunt of a genocidal war carried out by the Zionist forces. Explosions ravaged several areas of the Gaza overnight as the occupation forces tightened their grip on unarmed civilians. Days after the Zionist intensification of bombing and sporadic targeting of civilians in all areas and mobilizing tens of thousands of reservists to take the city, Palestinians continue to live fear amidst catastrophic humanitarian situation.
This is an extremely difficult reality. It is a disaster. Our homes are destroyed. The dead and the injured lie in the streets, and no ambulances can reach them.
The UN said that since the 20th of August, some 5,000 people are estimated to have been displaced from northern Gaza to Deir al-Balah and Khan Yunis in the enclave south. Many are exhausted by repeated displacements and unconvinced that any area, including the so-called humanitarian zones, offers safety.
Due to the intensity of the war and the shelling on us, our children and women have been affected. There is no food or drink. Life here is completely dead.
In total, the number of people displaced since a ceasefire between the Zionist entity and Hamas ended in March has risen to more than 800,000, according to UN reports.
We complain to God. We move from one displacement to another. A drone came and ordered us to evacuate amid gunfire and falling shells. This is our 11th displacement in the second round. May God revenge us against those who caused this.
Gaza City is in famine after 22 months of war, while the occupation military insists with its stubborn plan of offensive to seize the city, ignoring international agreements and humanitarian laws.
The Algerian Foreign Ministry summoned the Chargé d'Affaires of French Embassy in Algeria on Wednesday following a statement issued by the French diplomatic mission regarding the accreditation of French diplomatic and consular staff in Algeria. The statement noted that the French diplomats' attention was strongly drawn to the serious breach of well-established diplomatic norms contained in the statement.
The Chargé d'Affaires of the Embassy of the French Republic in Algiers was summoned on August 27, 2025, to the headquarters of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs by the Director General of Protocol. This came following a communiqué published by the French diplomatic representation concerning the accreditation of French diplomatic and consular agents in Algeria. The attention of the French diplomat was firmly drawn to the serious violation of the enshrined diplomatic practices. In this context, it was indicated that the communiqué was unacceptable, both in form and substance, as it contains a false and biased presentation of the facts and addresses directly to Algerian public opinion in order to allegedly hold the Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs fully responsible for the non-accreditation of French diplomatic and consular agents in Algeria.
The Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs explained that the situation deliberately orchestrated by the French authorities has caused serious harm to Algerian nationals residing in France.
After exhausting all the means taken at the initiative of the Algerian party, aimed at resolving this dispute to the satisfaction of both countries, it comes simply and solely in strict implementation of the principle of reciprocity, nothing more, nothing less. It is the French authorities that started, more than 2 years ago, to turn down the accreditation of heads of Algerian consular centers and consular agents in France. As a consequence of this situation, 3 consuls general and 6 Algerian consuls have not received their requested accreditations after more than 6 months of submitting their application. Likewise, 46 Algerian diplomatic and consular agents have not been able to join their position in France due to ignorance of the French side about their requests.
The ministry confirmed that the situation negatively affected the consular services provided to Algerian nationals, noting in this context that it was strongly emphasized to the French diplomat that he is fully aware that the visa issue is not only related to the matter of accreditations, and that it has become well known that his government has made of this issue a central pressure tool as part of the iron fist policy it seeks to impose on Algeria.
This situation, created in a deliberate and calculated manner by the French authorities, causes extensive damage to the Algerian nationals residing in France, as it negatively impacted consular services provided to them and deteriorated the quality of consular protection that should be reserved to them. It was strongly emphasized to the French diplomat that he is fully aware that the visa issue is not only limited to the question of accreditations, and that it is well known that his government has made of this issue a central means of pressure in the policy of iron fist that it seeks to impose on Algeria.
The French Prime Minister's austerity plan is deepening unrest in a country already shaken by economic and political crises, with a confidence vote in Bayreuth's government set just days before nationwide protests on September 10. Hossam Barkan has the report.
Bayreuth will fall like an autumn leaf, and Macron faces a new crisis that could leave him without a government by September 8, wrote the Wall Street Journal, describing a French government unable to end years of economic decline and financial deficit. The paper pointed to excessive public spending, high unemployment, and a deep trade deficit as signs of failure, warning that they have set the stage for a cold political and economic autumn. Bayreuth, it argued, will fall like his predecessors, as Paris still struggles to balance its budget and economy.
Investors caught a cold Tuesday on the prospect that the government might soon fall like an autumn leaf, because after all these years, Paris still can't get a grip on its budget or the economy. Emmanuel Macron faces a new crisis and could find himself on September 8th without a government, while the specter of dissolving parliament looms once again. Investors know that none of the potential winners in early elections will show real interest in balancing the budget, nor will anyone present a convincing plan to stimulate economic growth, the biggest challenge in France and much of Europe. The symptoms of the French disease are clear: excessive public spending, high unemployment, and a deep trade deficit.
Bayreuth's government, which once survived in no-confidence vote through what critics called unnatural alliances between the right and the far right, now faces an almost certain collapse. The Socialist Party, the far right, and the Greens have all pledged to withhold confidence, a move observers see as an unofficial start of the 2027 race. The slogan of saving public finances, championed by the fourth prime minister in less than 2 years, has lost credibility in markets and among economists. It is now associated with scrapping public holidays and raising taxes to confront a deficit nearing 6%, double the EU ceiling. Analysts warn that Macron's strategy of running forward while fueling manufactured crises has driven Paris into one of its most serious modern challenges, with France sliding towards a political breakdown that may no longer be sustainable.
And in Sudan, dozens were killed and others injured on Wednesday in artillery shelling by the Rapid Support Forces on Al-Fashir, North Darfur State, according to the city's Resistance Committee's coordination. The same source confirmed that the RSF continues to impose this suffocating siege on Al-Fashir, with ongoing shelling and targeting of civilians, adding that the city is experiencing a deteriorating humanitarian situation amid intensified attacks, closed roads, and the continued denial of aid deliveries. And the Resistance Committee's coordination in Al-Fashir warned that the RSF is deliberately targeting displacement camps with the aim of emptying them from civilians, turning them into military barracks. Mohammed Hassan, a member of the coordination, told Al 24 News that the RSF continues to attack civilians in camps, shelters, and overcrowded gatherings on an ethnic basis, using heavy weaponry to force evacuations, calling on the international community to act to stop these crimes.
The Rapid Support Forces militias continued their targeting of refugee camps, shelters, and civilian gatherings yesterday and today, based on ethnic and racial grounds, emptying them through heavy bombardment. The goal is, of course, to empty the refugee camps and turn them into military units. On behalf of the Coordination Committee of the Al-Fashar Resistance Committee, we call on the international community to take immediate action to stop what is happening to our people and citizens in Al-Fashar.
UNICEF warned that more than 260,000 civilians have been trapped in Al-Fashar without aid for over a year. It said the city has been under siege for 500 days, with children suffering from hunger and violence. The agency noted that more than 1,000 children have been killed or injured since the RSF imposed its siege on the city. UNICEF urged for an end to violence in Al-Fashar and full access for humanitarian aid, adding that malnutrition and cholera now threaten children across North Darfur. The Sudan Liberation Movement announced its full support for the decision of the Transitional Sovereignty Council Chairman and Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan to place all fighting forces under the system and law of the armed forces. Speaking to R24 News, the movement spokesman Amin Ishaq Zakaria said the group had already instructed its forces to implement the army commander's decision, calling it an important step toward regulating armed movements and moving firmly toward what he described as the battle of dignity to completely defeat RSF.
The recent decision issued by the chairman of the Transitional Sovereignty Council, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, which stipulates that all fighting forces alongside the armed forces in the Battle of Al-Karama shall be subject to the Sudanese Armed Forces law. We have previously issued a statement in which we affirmed our support for this decision, and we reiterate that we support this decision and have actually directed our forces to implement this decision and implement the security arrangements clause of the Sudanese peace agreement signed in the 2020 session, because this decision contributes positively in controlling the movement of forces and moving towards leading the Battle of Al-Karama and eliminating the Rapid Support Militia.
Moving on to the Russian-Ukrainian file, the Kremlin confirmed on Wednesday that any meeting between the Russian and Ukrainian presidents requires thorough preparation. In a statement, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that any high-level or top-level communication must be well prepared in order to be effective, adding that senior Russian and Ukrainian negotiators are in contact. However, he noted that a date for negotiations has not been set yet.
The leaders of the negotiation groups are in contact. We cannot give exact dates yet. This work is ongoing and we believe it should continue, because any other high-level or top-level communications, as we have said repeatedly, must be well prepared in order to be productive. The Russian side remains committed to resolving the Ukrainian conflict through peaceful means, primarily political and diplomatic. This, of course, requires a principle of reciprocity from the Ukrainian side. We highly value and also hope for the continuation of the mediation efforts and peace initiatives undertaken by the President of the United States. We believe these efforts are extremely important and can genuinely contribute to resolving this long and complex conflict, which was not of our making.
The acting governor of the Russian city of Rostov, Yuri Slyusar, said on Wednesday that debris from a drone launched by Ukraine caused the fire on the roof of a residential building in the southern Russian city, prompting the evacuation of 15 residents. The local official added that the attack did not result in any injuries, noting that the fire was put out. Russia said on Wednesday that its forces had succeeded in liberating the town of Pervomaisk in Donetsk region and killing more than 400 Ukrainian soldiers, following an offensive launched by the Russian army in the area. The Russian Ministry of Defense added in a statement that its forces continue to advance deep into Ukrainian defenses in several areas within the Sumy, Kharkiv, and Zaporizhia regions. This resulted in the deaths of hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers and mercenaries, as well as the destruction of combat vehicles, field artillery, electronic warfare stations, and ammunition depots. US President Donald Trump revealed his readiness to impose new economic sanctions on Russia if President Vladimir Putin does not agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine. Trump warned of a new package of sanctions against Moscow if it failed to reach a deal to end the war. Finally, Algeria's permanent mission to the UN in New York expressed a deep concern over the targeting of vital energy infrastructure under any pretext. A member of the Algerian mission to the UN said during a UN Security Council meeting on the Nord Stream 1 and 2 gas pipelines on Tuesday evening that such attacks on gas pipelines constitute a threat to international peace and security. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for tonight's program. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.